A signature can cost you everything, or it can buy your freedom. In downtown Manhattan, inside a glass-walled office on the 40th floor, Liam Pembroke thought he was signing away a burden. He looked at the woman sitting across from him, quiet, wearing a frayed cardigan, looking down at her hands, and he saw nothing but a mistake he was finally correcting. He thought he was the shark in the tank. He didn't know he was swimming with a leviathan. He mocked her silence. He laughed at her poverty. He signed the divorce papers with a flourish, believing he was saving his millions from a gold digger. He had no idea that the woman sitting across from him wasn't just a housewife. She was the hidden signatory of the Galloway Trust, the silent owner of the very building they were sitting in, and she controlled a fortune that made his millions look like pocket change. The air conditioning in the conference room of Pembroke & Associates was set to a freezing 65 degrees, a tactic Liam Pembroke used to unsettle his opponents. But Soraya wasn't shivering. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the mahogany table that she knew, for a fact, cost $45,000. She knew this because she had approved the invoice 3 years ago through a shell company, though Liam had no idea. "Are we doing this, or are you going to cry first?" Liam asked, leaning back in his leather chair. He spun a heavy Mont Blanc pen between his fingers, a gift Soraya had bought him for their 5th anniversary by saving grocery money. He didn't care. Standing next to him was Vanessa Galt, tall, sharply dressed in Versace, with a smile that looked like it was cut from glass. She was Liam's chief financial officer, and for the last 6 months, his mistress. "Soraya, look," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "We know this is hard, but Liam has outgrown this. The company is going public next quarter. We need to streamline his assets. And frankly, you're a liability." Liam chuckled, tossing a thick document across the table. It landed with a heavy thud. "The settlement is generous, Soraya," Liam said. "I'm letting you keep the Honda. I'm even giving you $50,000 in cash. That's more money than you've ever seen in your life. But you signed the NDA, and you signed the waiver of spousal support. I'm not having you leech off me when Pembroke & Associates hits the NASDAQ." Soraya finally looked up. Her eyes were tired, but dry. "You think I'm a leech, Liam? I think you're a waitress. I made the mistake of marrying," he snapped. "I pulled you out of that diner in Brooklyn. I gave you a house in Greenwich. And what did you do? You stayed home. You have no ambition, no drive. You don't fit in my world anymore." Vanessa, she understands power. She understands the market. "I understand that you're leveraging the firm's debt against your personal assets," Soraya said quietly. The room went silent. Liam blinked. Vanessa's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Excuse me?" Vanessa asked, her voice sharp. "The mezzanine loan you took from Blackwood Capital last week," Soraya continued, her voice steady, monotone. "Interest rate is prime plus 4. You use the Greenwich house as collateral. If the IPO fails, you lose the house. If you divorce me today, the bank might call the loan unless you have a guarantor." Liam slammed his hand on the table. "How the hell do you know about the Blackwood deal? That's confidential." "I read," Soraya said simply. "You went through my briefcase?" Liam stood up, his face reddening. "This is exactly why I'm leaving you. You're paranoid and invasive. You know nothing about high finance, Soraya. You just memorized some words you saw on a paper. Sign the damn divorce papers. Blackwood Capital doesn't care about a housewife." Soraya reached into her purse. She didn't pull out a tissue. She pulled out a cheap ballpoint pen. "You're right, Liam," she said softly. "I don't belong in your world. I'll sign." Liam let out a breath, exchanging a victorious look with Vanessa. "Smart girl. Take the 50 grand and find a nice apartment in Queens. Maybe go back to waiting tables. It suits you. 2-1. Soraya flipped to the last page. The clause was bolded, complete severance of assets. It stated that neither party would have any claim to the other's future earnings, debts, or properties acquired after this date. "Are you sure you want to waive all rights to my assets?" Soraya asked, pausing with the pen hovering over the paper. "And you waive all rights to mine?" Liam laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Your assets? Soraya, your checking account has $1,200 in it. Yes, I waive my rights to your fortune. Just sign it." She signed. The scratch of the pen sounded like a thunderclap in the quiet room. She pushed the papers back to him. "Done," she whispered. Liam snatched the papers, checking the signature. He grinned. Finally. I'm free. He looked at his watch. Now, get out. Vanessa and I have a celebration dinner at Le Bernardin. Security will escort you. Soraya stood up. She smoothed down her cardigan. She didn't look back at the man she had loved for 7 years. She didn't look at the woman who had stolen him. She walked to the glass door. Goodbye, Liam, she said. I hope Blackwood Capital treats you well. Liam didn't even look up. He was too busy uncorking the champagne. Soraya walked out of the skyscraper and onto the bustling sidewalk of Fifth Avenue. It had started to rain, a cold, gray drizzle that soaked through her thin clothes. Passers-by bumped into her, ignoring the woman who looked like she had just lost everything. And in a way, she had. She had lost her husband. She had lost the illusion of a simple life she had tried so hard to maintain. She walked 2 blocks south, away from the prying eyes of Pembroke and Associates. She stopped in front of a nondescript black sedan, idling in a no-parking zone. A man in a dark suit stepped out immediately, holding an umbrella. Mrs. Sterling, the man said, bowing his head slightly. It's Miss Kensington now, Alfred, Soraya said, her voice changing. The softness was gone. The hesitation vanished. Her posture straightened, the slump of the beaten housewife disappearing instantly. My apologies, Miss Kensington, Alfred said, opening the rear door. Mr. Cole is waiting for you at the private hangar. The jet is fueled for Zurich. Soraya slid into the leather interior of the Bentley. She pulled out her phone, not the cracked iPhone 8 she used around Liam, but a secure satellite phone she kept hidden in the lining of her purse. She dialed a number. Harrison, she said. Soraya, a deep, gravelly voice answered. Harrison Cole, the most feared corporate litigator in New York, and her personal consigliere. Did he sign? He signed, Soraya said, watching the rain streak against the tinted windows. He mocked me, Harrison. He told me to go back to waiting tables. Dime. He's a fool, Harrison replied. Does he know? He thinks Blackwood Capital is just a lender, Soraya said, a cold smile touching her lips for the first time that day. He has no idea Blackwood is a subsidiary of the Kensington Group. He borrowed money from his own wife to fund his IPO. The board meeting for Pembroke and Associates is scheduled for next Friday, Harrison noted. The acquisition vote is on the agenda. Liam expects to be named CEO after the public offering. As well. He expects a lot of things, Soraya said. Activate the clause on the loan. The divorce papers are signed. The asset severance is legally binding. He waived his rights to my assets, which means he waived his protection against my companies. And the collateral? Harrison asked. The Greenwich House, Soraya said. Foreclose on it. Tonight? That's ruthless, Soraya. You lived there. It was never my home, Harrison. It was his stage. I was just a prop. Soraya looked out the window as the car merged onto the highway toward Teterboro Airport. Liam wanted a world of power and high finance? I'm going to show him what that world really looks like. He thinks he's a billionaire in the making. He's about to find out he's just an employee. I'll prepare the files, Harrison said. Oh, and Soraya? The team in Geneva has been asking for you. The Kensington Trust needs a signature for the acquisition of that pharmaceutical chain in Asia. A $4 billion deal. I'll sign it when I land, Soraya said. I'm done playing the housewife. She hung up. She reached into the seat pocket and pulled out a wet wipe, scrubbing the makeup off her face to reveal skin that was glowing and sharp. She pulled the hair tie from her ponytail, letting her hair fall in waves. She wasn't Soraya Pembroke, the waitress Liam had saved. She was Soraya Kensington, granddaughter of Elias Kensington, the steel and shipping magnate who had built half the infrastructure of the East Coast. When her parents died, she had inherited everything a fortune kept in blind trusts, managed by proxies to protect her from fortune hunters. She had met Liam when she was taking a break from her life, working a normal job to understand how real people lived. She fell in love with his drive. She thought he loved her for her. She hid the money to be sure. She was sure now. He didn't love her. He loved money. Alfred, she said to the driver. Yes, ma'am? Call the tailor in Zurich. I need a new wardrobe for the gala next week. Liam and Vanessa will be there promoting their IPO. I think it's time I introduced myself properly. Very good, ma'am. Soraya looked at her hand, where her wedding ring used to be. The skin was pale. She didn't feel sad anymore. She felt expensive. The champagne at Le Bernardin tasted like victory. Liam held the crystal flute up to the light, admiring the golden bubbles. Across the table, Vanessa was radiant, already planning the redecoration of the Greenwich estate, now that the clutter, as she referred to Soraya, was gone. "We need to rip out that kitchen," Vanessa said, slicing into her scallop. "It's so domestic. We need clean lines, industrial chic, something that says power couple, not soccer mom." Liam laughed, reaching for her hand. "Do whatever you want, babe. The IPO is going to value the firm at $300 million. You can buy a whole new house if you want, but I do love the Greenwich place. It's a trophy." His phone buzzed on the white tablecloth. Liam frowned. It was late. He flipped it over. It was Maria, the housekeeper. Probably calling to ask when Soraya is coming back to pick up her knitting, Liam joked, answering the call on speaker so Vanessa could share the amusement. "Maria, what is it?" "I'm at dinner." "Mr. Pembroke?" Maria's voice was shrill, trembling with panic. "You have to come home. There are men here, police, and men in suits. They are taking things." Liam froze. "What? Who is taking things?" "They say they are from the bank. They are putting locks on the doors. They told me to leave." Liam ended the call, his face draining of color. "It's a mistake," Vanessa said, though her eyes narrowed. "Call Blackwood. It's a clerical error." Liam was already dialing his contact at Blackwood Capital, a vice president named Gary who had wined and dined him just last week. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service." "What the hell?" Liam muttered. He stood up, throwing a handful of cash onto the table. "We have to go." The drive to Greenwich usually took 45 minutes. Liam made it in 30, his Porsche 911 weaving through traffic like a missile. When he pulled into the long, gravel driveway of his estate, the scene was chaotic. 2 moving trucks blocked the entrance. A sheriff's cruiser sat with its lights flashing silently. Men in dark jumpsuits were carrying out furniture, his furniture. Liam slammed the car door and stormed up the steps. "Hey, put that down. What the hell do you think you're doing?" A man in a charcoal suit stepped forward. He held a clipboard and looked bored. This was Mr. Henderson, a specialist in high-value asset recovery. "Mr. Pembroke?" Henderson asked. "I own this house," Liam shouted, pointing a finger in Henderson's face. "I am the CEO of Pembroke and Associates. Get your men off my property before I sue you into oblivion." Henderson didn't blink. He handed Liam a document. "Notice of default and immediate acceleration," Henderson said calmly, "per the terms of your loan agreement with Blackwood Capital, Clause 14. Section B. Any significant alteration in the borrower's marital status or asset protection profile constitutes a risk event. You signed a divorce settlement today, waiving spousal assets. That triggered the risk assessment. The bank has called the loan." "Called the loan?" Liam sputtered. "I have 30 years to pay this." "Not under the risk clause," Henderson corrected. "You owe the full principal, $4.2 million. Payable immediately. Since you didn't wire the funds by 5 p.m. today, we are seizing the collateral." "This is insanity," Vanessa screamed, stepping out of the Porsche, her heels sinking into the gravel. "We have an IPO next week. We're good for the money." Henderson looked at Vanessa, then back to his clipboard. "The lender isn't interested in promises, Miss Galt. They want the asset. We're changing the locks. You have 10 minutes to retrieve personal items. Anything left after that becomes property of the trust." "Who is the lender?" Liam demanded, grabbing Henderson's lapel. "I want to speak to the owner of Blackwood." Henderson removed Liam's hand with surprising strength. "The ownership of Blackwood Capital is held by a blind trust," Henderson said fastidiously. "But my orders came from the top. The directive was very specific. Scorch the earth." Liam stood there, stunned, as a mover walked past him carrying his golf clubs. It was humiliating. It was impossible. "Liam," Vanessa hissed, pulling him aside. "Fix this. If the investors find out you're homeless a week before the IPO, the stock price will tank. We'll be ruined." "I can't fix it tonight," Liam snapped. "We'll stay at a hotel. I'll call my lawyers in the morning. We'll sue Blackwood for wrongful foreclosure." "We can't stay at a hotel," Vanessa whispered, her face pale. "Your credit cards, the corporate Amex, they're all tied to the Blackwood credit line." Liam pulled out his wallet. He tried to buy a hotel room on his phone app. Declined. He tried another card. Declined. He looked up at the mansion he had bragged about for years. The lights were being turned off, room by room. He was standing in the dark. For the first time in years, Liam Pembroke felt a flicker of fear. He thought about Soraya. She had walked out with nothing but a check for $50,000. She knew, Liam whispered. The realization hit him like a physical blow. She asked me about the loan in the meeting. She knew this would happen. Soraya? Vanessa scoffed. Please. She probably just read a horoscope that said bad luck today. She's a nobody. But as the rain began to fall again, soaking his bespoke suit, Liam wasn't so sure. Zurich, Switzerland. The playground of the old money elite. 1 week had passed since the foreclosure. Liam had managed to salvage some dignity by borrowing cash from a college friend to fly himself and Vanessa to the Global Economic Summit. He was running on fumes, desperation, and caffeine. The plan was simple. Secure a cornerstone investor for the IPO. If he could get a commitment of $50 million, he could pay off Blackwood, sue them, and get his house back. He just needed one signature. The Grand Older Hotel was a palace of marble and gold leaf. The ballroom was filled with the titans of industry oil sheikhs, tech billionaires, and European royalty. Liam adjusted his tie. He looked tired. The stress of the last week had etched deep lines around his eyes. Vanessa was by his side, clutching a glass of champagne like a lifeline. She was on edge. She had realized that Liam's fortune was a house of cards, and she was already scanning the room for a safer harbor. There, Liam whispered, nodding toward a gray-haired man surrounded by admirers. That's Archibald Thorne, CEO of Chimera Banking. If I get 5 minutes with him, we're saved. Liam straightened his spine and approached. Mr. Thorne. Liam Pembroke. Pembroke and Associates. Wonderful to see you. Archibald Thorne turned, his eyes cold and appraising. Pembroke, I heard you had some housing troubles in New York. Liam froze. The news had traveled. A misunderstanding with a predatory lender, Mr. Thorne. My lawyers are handling it. It's actually an advantage. It shows we're lean and ready for the public market. Thorne didn't look convinced. Risk management is a key indicator of leadership, Mr. Pembroke. Losing one's home suggests a lack of foresight. Before Liam could defend himself, a hush fell over the room. It wasn't the quiet of a lull in conversation. It was the heavy, reverent silence of power entering a space. The double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. A woman stood there. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged her frame, with a neckline that plunged daringly low, showcasing a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that looked heavy enough to sink a yacht. Her hair, usually tied back in a messy bun, cascaded in structured waves around her shoulders. Her makeup was sharp, accentuating eyes that scanned the room with the precision of a hawk. It was Soraya. But it wasn't the Soraya who clipped coupons. It wasn't the Soraya who waited tables. This woman radiated an aura of command that made the billionaires in the room look like schoolboys. Liam dropped his drink. The glass shattered on the marble floor, but no one looked at him. Everyone was looking at her. Who is that? Vanessa whispered, her voice trembling. Is that Soraya? It can't be, Liam stammered. She's in Queens. She has no money. Soraya began to descend the stairs. She didn't walk, she glided. Flanking her were 2 men, Harrison Cole, the famous lawyer, and a man Liam recognized from the cover of Forbes as the finance minister of Switzerland. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, the crowd parted for her. Archibald Thorne, the man who had just looked at Liam with disdain, immediately stepped forward, bowing his head slightly. Miss Kensington, Thorne said, his voice full of respect. We weren't sure you would be attending this year. I had some loose ends to tie up in New York. Archibald, Soraya said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, and carried effortlessly across the room. But the Kensington Group is looking to expand its European portfolio. Kensington Group. The words echoed in Liam's brain. The Kensington Group was a myth. A privately held conglomerate that owned shipping lines, real estate, and Blackwood Capital. Liam felt the blood drain from his face. He felt dizzy. He pushed past a waiter, stumbling toward her. Soraya? He croaked. She stopped. She turned slowly, her gaze landing on him. There was no warmth in her eyes, only a polite, distant curiosity as if she were looking at a bug she couldn't quite identify. "Liam," she said, "I see you made it. How was the flight? Coach can be so cramping." You're the Kensington Group?" Liam gasped. The room was watching. "You own Blackwood?" "I own the parent company, yes," Soraya said calmly. She took a sip of water from a glass a waiter materialized to hold for her. "You foreclosed on me," Liam shouted, losing control. "You ruined me. You're my wife." "Ex-wife," Soraya corrected sharply. "And I didn't ruin you, Liam. You signed the papers. Complete severance of assets. You wanted to ensure I couldn't touch your money. I simply ensured you couldn't touch mine." "This is fraud," Vanessa shrieked, stepping in. "You pretended to be poor." "You tricked him," Soraya laughed. It was a terrifying sound, light, airy, and utterly dismissive. "I didn't pretend anything, Vanessa," Soraya said, looking the other woman up and down with amusement. "I lived simply because I valued people over possessions. I wanted to see if Liam loved me, or if he loved the lifestyle. I got my answer 7 years ago. I just waited for him to make the first move." Soraya stepped closer to Liam, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You called me a liability, Liam. You said I had no ambition. But while you were playing CEO in your little glass office, I was restructuring the global shipping lanes of the Pacific. You're not a shark, you're bait." She turned back to the crowd. "Gentlemen," she announced, "the Kensington Group is announcing a hostile takeover of Pembroke and Associates tomorrow morning. We've already acquired the mezzanine debt. We will be dismantling the firm and selling it for parts." She looked back at Liam one last time. "It's just business, Liam. You understand power, don't you?" Soraya turned and walked away, the sea of billionaires closing around her, eager for a word. Liam was left standing in the shards of his broken glass, with Vanessa slowly backing away from him, her eyes already scanning the room for a new target. He was alone. And he realized, with a sickening lurch, that he hadn't just signed a divorce paper. He had signed his own death warrant. Monday morning in Wall Street was usually a symphony of ringing phones and shouting traders, but at the headquarters of Pembroke and Associates, it was a funeral march. Liam Pembroke hadn't slept in 48 hours. He had flown back from Zurich in economy class, a humiliating experience where he was squeezed between a crying toddler and a backpacker who smelled of patchouli and gone straight to his office. Or rather, he tried to. When he swiped his security badge at the turnstile in the lobby, the light flashed angry red. "Access denied." "Hey, Jerry," Liam barked at the security guard he had ignored for 5 years. "Fix this. My card's demagnetized." Jerry didn't look up from his monitor. "Card's fine, Mr. Pembroke. Your clearance has been revoked." "Revoked? I'm the CEO." "Not as of 8 a.m. this morning," a voice said from the elevator bank. Liam spun around. It was Harrison Cole, Soraya's lawyer. He was flanked by 3 other attorneys who looked like they carved up companies for sport. "Mr. Cole," Liam seethed, stepping forward, "you can't lock me out of my own building. I founded this firm." "And you leveraged it to the hilt," Harrison replied, handing Liam a thick envelope. "You missed your margin call on the Blackwood loan. But more importantly, the Kensington Group exercised its rights under the debt agreement to convert the outstanding principal into equity. As of this morning, my client owns 51% of Pembroke and Associates." "That's illegal," Liam shouted, causing people in the lobby to stop and stare. "You can't just convert debt to equity overnight." "Read the fine print on page 42 of the agreement you signed, Liam," Harrison said dryly. "The swift action default clause. It's standard in high-risk lending. You were so eager to get the cash for your IPO roadshow that you didn't read the terms. You just saw the zeros." Liam ripped open the envelope. His eyes scanned the document. His hands began to shake. It was all there. He hadn't just borrowed money. He had essentially sold his company for a loan he couldn't pay back. "I'll fight this," Liam spat. "I have the board on my side. They won't let Soraya dismantle the firm." "The board?" Harrison chuckled. "The board met an hour ago via emergency Zoom call. They voted unanimously to accept the Kensington acquisition offer. They're getting a golden parachute. You, however, are being terminated for cause." "Cause?" "Gross mismanagement of funds, reckless borrowing, and," Harrison paused, savoring the moment, "conduct unbecoming of a CEO. The video of your little outburst at the Zurich summit went viral, Liam. Investors don't like stability risks." Liam felt the floor tilting beneath him. He looked around the lobby, the marble floors, the fountain, the brass nameplate. It was all gone. "Where is she?" Liam whispered. "Where is Soraya?" "Miss Kensington is in the penthouse office," Harrison said. "She's conducting her first meeting as chairwoman. She anticipated you might want to debrief. She granted you 5 minutes." Harrison signaled to Jerry, who buzzed the turnstile open. Liam walked to the elevator like a man marching to the gallows. He rode up to the 40th floor, the same floor where, just a week ago, he had forced Soraya to sign the divorce papers. The office was buzzing with activity. But the faces were different. His loyal sycophants were gone, replaced by sharp-eyed auditors in gray suits. They were boxing up files. They were taking down his awards. He burst into his old office. Soraya was sitting in his chair. She was wearing a white power suit that made her look angelic and terrifying all at once. She was on the phone, speaking fluent Mandarin. She held up a finger, silencing him. She finished the call and hung up. "You're late, Liam," she said. "I expected you here 10 minutes ago." "You planned this," Liam said, his voice trembling with rage. "From the beginning. The loan. The divorce. You set me up." "I didn't set you up, Liam," Soraya said, standing up and walking to the window to look out at the city she effectively owned. "I gave you a rope. You're the one who tied the noose." "Why?" Liam asked, tears of frustration welling in his eyes. "We were married. I loved you." Soraya turned, her expression hardening. "Did you? Or did you love that I was quiet? That I cooked your meals and washed your clothes while you cheated on me with my CFO?" Liam flinched. "You knew about Vanessa?" "I own the phone company you use, Liam," Soraya said casually. "I have the transcripts of every text, every call. She's a liability. She's a peasant. I read them all." She walked back to the desk and picked up a file. "Here is your severance package," she said. "It's consistent with the company handbook you wrote. 2 weeks' pay. And we'll validate your parking for today." "2 weeks?" Liam stared at her. "I'm worth millions." "Not anymore," Soraya said. "The foreclosure wiped out your equity. The divorce settlement, which you insisted on, protects my assets from your debts, but it also prevents you from claiming any of the company's value now that I own it. You are, legally speaking, destitute." "Vanessa will stick by me," Liam said, grasping at straws. "We're a team. She's brilliant. We'll start a new firm. We'll crush you." Soraya raised an eyebrow. She pressed a button on the intercom. "Send her in." The door opened. Vanessa walked in. But she wasn't looking at Liam. She was holding a box of her personal belongings. "Vanessa," Liam said, stepping toward her. Tell her we're leaving." Vanessa didn't make eye contact. She walked past him to Soraya's desk. "I have the files you asked for, Miss Kensington," Vanessa said, her voice shaking. "The offshore accounts Liam set up to hide the kickbacks. It's all documented." Liam froze. "Vanessa? What are you doing?" Soraya took the files. "Thank you, Vanessa. Your cooperation is noted. The district attorney will be pleased to see you're a whistleblower. It might keep you out of prison." "Prison?" Liam gasped. "Vanessa cut a deal," Soraya explained, looking at Liam with pity. "She traded you for immunity. She told us everything about the embezzled funds from the pension scheme." Liam looked at Vanessa. You traitor." Vanessa finally looked at him, her eyes cold. "You're broke, Liam. And you're going to jail. I'm not going down with the ship." Soraya offered me a clean slate. I took it. "Get out," Soraya ordered Vanessa. Vanessa scurried out without a backward glance. Liam fell into the chair opposite the desk, the same chair Soraya had sat in a week ago. "You took everything," he whispered. "No," Soraya said. "I took back what was mine, and I exposed what was yours, which, it turns out, was nothing but fraud and ego." She checked her watch. "Your 5 minutes are up. The FBI is waiting in the lobby, Liam. I'd suggest you don't keep them waiting. They're not as patient as I was." 3 years later, the cafeteria at the Federal Correctional Institution in Otisville was noisy, smelling of boiled cabbage and industrial cleaner. Liam Pembroke sat alone at a metal table, staring at his tray of gray meatloaf. He looked older. His hair was thinning, and the arrogance that had once defined his face had been replaced by a permanent scowl of bitterness. He had been sentenced to 5 years for securities fraud and embezzlement, He picked up a crumpled newspaper that another inmate had left behind. It was the Wall Street Journal. He flipped through it idly, his eyes scanning the market numbers that used to be his lifeblood. He stopped on page 3. There was a picture. It was a photo of a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new hospital wing in Brooklyn. Standing in the center, holding the giant scissors, was Soraya. She looked radiant, older but more beautiful, wearing a simple but elegant dress. Next to her was a man Liam didn't recognize, someone tall, kind-eyed, with a hand resting gently on her back. The headline read, "Kensington Foundation donates $500 million to public health." The article described Soraya Kensington not just as an heiress, but as a visionary philanthropist. It mentioned her partner, Dr. James Arison, a renowned pediatric surgeon. It spoke of her humility, her grace, and her empire. It didn't mention Liam, not once. He wasn't even a footnote in her story anymore. "Hey, Pembroke," a guard shouted. "You got a visitor." Liam's heart jumped. A visitor? He hadn't had a visitor in 2 years. Vanessa had never come. His old friends had abandoned him. He stood up, smoothing his jumpsuit. Maybe it was an appeal lawyer. Maybe it was a book deal. He walked to the visitation room, sitting behind the plexiglass. Sitting on the other side wasn't a lawyer. It was Alfred, Soraya's driver. Alfred looked exactly the same as he had that rainy day in Manhattan. Immaculate suit, stoic expression. He picked up the phone. Liam picked up his side. "Alfred, is she here?" "Miss Kensington is busy, Mr. Pembroke," Alfred said, his voice tinny through the receiver. "She is currently in Tokyo." "Then why are you here?" Alfred slid a small envelope through the slot at the bottom of the glass. "She asked me to deliver this. She said it was the final piece of business." Liam tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photograph and a check. The photograph was of the diner in Brooklyn where they had met. But it wasn't a diner anymore. It was boarded up, with a sold sign on the front. The check was made out to Liam Pembroke. The amount was for $12.50. Liam stared at it, confused. "What is this?" "The price of the breakfast she ordered the day you met," Alfred said. "She insisted on paying you back for the coffee and pancakes. She said she didn't want to owe you anything, not even a penny." Liam stared at the check. $12.50. That was the value Soraya had placed on their entire past. It wasn't a settlement, it was a receipt. "She also wanted you to know," Alfred continued, "that she bought the building that diner was in. She's turning it into a shelter for women who have suffered financial abuse. She named it the Phoenix Center." Liam felt a lump in his throat. "Is she happy?" he asked, his voice cracking. Alfred stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked at Liam with a mixture of pity and finality. "She is free, Mr. Pembroke. And that is worth more than any fortune." Alfred hung up the phone and walked away. Liam watched him go. He looked down at the check in his hand. $12.50. He started to laugh. A dry, rasping laugh that turned into a cough. He had chased billions. He had destroyed his marriage for money. He had mocked the only person who ever actually cared about him. And in the end, his net worth was $12.50. He crumpled the check in his fist, dropped his head into his hands, and for the first time since the day he signed the divorce papers, Liam Pembroke cried. The iron gates of the Otisville Federal Correctional Institution didn't open with a fanfare. There was just a heavy, mechanical clank, followed by the buzz of an electric lock disengaging. Liam Pembroke stepped out into the blinding white light of a Tuesday morning. The air tasted different, out here, sharper, less recycled. He was wearing a gray suit that the prison discharge officer had retrieved from a donation bin. It was 2 sizes too big, the shoulders slumping down his arms, the trousers pooling around his cheap canvas shoes. He stood on the curb, clutching a clear plastic bag that contained his entire life. A toothbrush, a comb, a folded piece of paper with the address of a halfway house in Newark, and $12.50 in cash. The exact amount of the check Soraya had sent him 3 years ago. He had cashed it the day before his release. He needed the bus fare. He waited. For the first 10 minutes, he stood with his chest slightly puffed out, a ghost of his old arrogance flickering to life. He scanned the road for a black sedan. Maybe Vanessa had come to her senses. Maybe a former business partner wanted to offer him a consulting gig, valuing his ruthless experience. But as the sun climbed higher and the heat began to radiate off the asphalt, Liam's posture collapsed. No one was coming. A Greyhound bus rattled to a halt in front of him, spewing black exhaust that smelled of burnt oil. The driver, a man with a face carved from granite, didn't even look at him as he paid his fare. Liam walked down the aisle, the floor sticky beneath his shoes, and took a seat in the back. As the bus merged onto the highway, Liam pressed his forehead against the cool glass. The skyline of Manhattan rose in the distance, a glittering auze of steel and glass. It was the city he had once ruled. He used to look at those towers and see assets, equity, leverage. Now, they looked like the bars of a different kind of cage, one he was locked out of forever. Life in the halfway house was a study in sensory assault. The walls were thin as paper, vibrating with the sounds of coughing, arguing, and the low hum of cheap televisions. The air smelled permanently of boiled cabbage and stale cigarette smoke. Liam Pembroke, the man who had once commissioned a custom blend of sandalwood and bergamot for his office HVAC system, now slept on a mattress that sagged in the middle like a hammock. Finding work was a nightmare. Mr. Pembroke, the manager of a mid-range car dealership, said, looking at Liam's application with a sneer. "It says here you were convicted of securities, fraud, and embezzlement." "I was the CEO of a major firm," Liam argued, trying to project confidence despite his frayed collar. "I know how to sell. I know numbers." "We don't need numbers," the manager said, tossing the application into the trash. "We need trust. And we don't hire felons. Get out." Door after door slammed in his face. The financial world had blacklisted him. The corporate world viewed him as radioactive. Even retail stores hesitated. He was overqualified for the floor and underqualified for the register because of his record. 6 months after his release, Liam finally landed a job. He was a night janitor for a cleaning service contracted to service high-rise office buildings in Midtown. The irony was so sharp it felt like a physical wound. He was returning to the skyscrapers, not as a titan, but as the invisible force that wiped away their filth. His shift started at 8 p.m. He would push his cart laden with bleach, rags, and garbage bags through the silent, carpeted corridors of hedge funds and law firms. He cleaned conference tables that cost more than he would earn in a decade. He emptied trash cans filled with sandwich wrappers from Della's he used to own shares in. One night, while polishing the glass wall of a boardroom on the 30th floor, he stopped. Below him, the city sprawled out, an ocean of lights. He looked at his reflection in the glass. His hair was completely gray now, thinning rapidly. His face was gaunt, deep lines etched around his mouth from years of frowning in a cell. He looked like a ghost haunting his own past. He turned away from the window and saw a magazine left on the mahogany table. It was a copy of The Economist. He shouldn't touch it. The rules were strict. Clean, don't read. But the name on the cover pulled him in like a magnet. The Kensington Era. How One Woman is Remaking Global Logistics. Liam's hands shook as he picked it up. There she was. Soraya. She wasn't smiling in the photo. She looked fierce. She was standing on the deck of a massive cargo ship, a hard hat under her arm, the wind catching strands of her hair. She looked elemental, unstoppable. He sat down in the CEO's chair, a breach of protocol that could get him fired, and began to read. The article detailed the expansion of the Kensington Group. She had acquired 3 major shipping lines in the Pacific. She had revolutionized green energy and supply chains. Her net worth was now estimated to be triple what it was when they were married. But it was the sidebar that crushed him. While most billionaires focus on space travel or social media, the article read, Soraya Kensington has quietly become the largest private donor to domestic abuse shelters in the tri-state area. Her flagship project, the Phoenix Center, opens next month in Brooklyn. It is built on the site of a former diner, a location Miss Kensington describes as the place where I learned the difference between price and value. Liam dropped the magazine. The diner. The place where they had met. She had bought it. She had turned the memory of their meeting into a sanctuary for women escaping men like him. He felt a sudden, violent urge to scream. He wanted to tear the magazine apart. He wanted to throw the chair through the window. But he didn't. He couldn't afford to lose this job. He carefully placed the magazine back exactly where he found it. He wiped his fingerprints off the glossy cover with his rag. Then he picked up his spray bottle and continued to clean the glass, erasing his own reflection stroke by stroke. Winter came early that year, brutal and gray. Liam was assigned a special detail. The cleaning company needed extra hands for a post-event cleanup at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was the night of the Gala for Global Change. Liam arrived at the museum's service entrance at 11 p.m. The event was winding down, but the guests were still mingling in the Great Hall. He was handed a broom and a dustpan and told to wait in the shadows of the Egyptian wing until the guests cleared out. From his vantage point behind a massive sandstone pillar, Liam watched them. The tuxedos, the silk gowns, the flash of diamonds under the museum lights. It was the world he had been born to rule, the world he had clawed his way into, and the world that had chewed him up and spit him out. And then, the crowd parted. Soraya was walking through the hall. She was breathtaking. She wore a gown of silver silk that flowed around her like liquid mercury. She was laughing at something. A man next to her said. The man was tall, with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair. Dr. James Arison, the pediatric surgeon the tabloids said she was engaged to. He had a hand on the small of her back, protective and gentle, not possessing, just present. Liam took a step forward from behind the pillar. He didn't know what he intended to do. Shout? Beg? Apologize? Soraya stopped. She turned her head, her eyes scanning the periphery of the room. For a split second, her gaze seemed to land on the dark corner where Liam stood. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. See me, he thought, desperate for acknowledgement, even if it was hatred. Hate me. Scream at me. Just acknowledge that I exist. But Soraya's eyes didn't focus. She swept past him as if he were part of the architecture, as if he were just another shadow in a room full of ancient relics. She turned back to Dr. Arison, smiled, and they walked out of the massive front doors into the waiting night. Liam stood there, paralyzed. A supervisor in a green vest walked up and tapped him on the shoulder. Hey buddy, you sleeping? Someone dropped a glass of red wine near the Temple of Dendur. Go mop it up. She didn't see me, Liam whispered. Who? The supervisor asked, annoyed. My wife, Liam said. That was my wife. The supervisor laughed, a harsh, barking sound that echoed off the stone walls. Yeah, sure, pal. And I'm the King of England. Grab the mop. Liam looked at the mop bucket. The gray, swirling water. Yes, Liam said quietly. I'll get it. 2 weeks later, Liam took the subway to Brooklyn. He got off at the stop near the old diner. It was unrecognizable. The cracked pavement and fading awning were gone. In their place stood a sleek, modern building made of warm brick and glass. A tasteful brass plaque by the door read, The Phoenix Center. Liam stood across the street, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn coat. He watched as people came and went. He saw a young woman with a bruised cheek being ushered inside by a counselor. He saw a mother holding a toddler's hand, walking out with a bag of groceries and a look of relief on her face. He saw the legacy of Soraya Kensington. He realized then that he wasn't the villain of her story anymore. He wasn't the antagonist. He was just the catalyst. He was the match that had burned her down so she could rise from the ashes. He was a plot device in a story that was no longer about him. He felt a vibration in his pocket. He pulled out his cheap burner phone. It was the cleaning agency. Pembroke, the dispatcher barked. We got an emergency job. Sewage backup in a basement in the Bronx. Double time. You want it? Liam looked at the Phoenix Center. He looked at the warm light spilling out from its windows. Yeah, Liam said, his voice raspy. I want it. Good. Be there in an hour. Liam hung up. He looked at the building one last time. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin a quarter. It was all the change he had from the $12.50. He walked over to a storm drain. You win, Soraya, he whispered. He dropped the coin. It fell into the darkness with a tiny, insignificant splash. Liam Pembroke turned his collar up against the wind. He walked toward the subway entrance, descending into the underground, disappearing into the belly of the city that had forgotten his name. Above him, the sun broke through the clouds, shining on the glass facade of the Phoenix Center, reflecting a light that was blinding, pure, and utterly unforgiving. And that is the story of Liam Pembroke and Soraya Kensington. It's a harsh reminder that in the game of life, the loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. Liam mistook silence for weakness and modesty for poverty. He signed away a billion-dollar future, because he was too blinded by his own arrogance to see the treasure sitting right in front of him. He learned the hard way that a signature can change your life, but your character determines your destiny. Soraya didn't destroy him. She simply let him destroy himself, while she built an empire on the very foundations he mocked. Now, I have a question for you. If you were Soraya, would you have sent Liam that check for $12? $50? Or would you have left him with absolutely nothing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story about the hidden truths of the rich and powerful. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you underestimate. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous. See you in the next video.